There's a good chance that most of the people seeing this video are engaged in some kind of self-sabotage, resulting in them enduring worse conditions in life than they have to, or missing out on opportunities to make their life better. The non-player character, or NPC meme, refers to someone who just repeats the same behaviors and catchphrases without ever really thinking for themselves. They seal themselves in an echo chamber of the same friends and acquaintances and online content that communicates and reinforces the same message. And then they get irritated when occasionally someone challenges it. YouTube tells me that it's totally normal for about a third of people who see my videos or any videos to keep watching past the first 30 seconds or so. And so the popular recommendations and advice is usually that you have to make the beginning of your video really high energy and impactful, otherwise you will lose people. But I think, frankly, some people are not worth holding on to. Many of them have already become NPCs and can't really be helped because they no longer have the capacity to listen to anything complex that might actually help them. The self-improvement YouTuber Hamza, who makes videos for young men, and I really highly recommend him, he experimented for a while, making his videos really full of memes and energy and distractions, but later dialed it back to what he's best at: brutally honest and authentic communication. And I really do believe that this is the right way forward, because the right people who are receptive will listen. When I was in university, I remember that I was able to read for several hours without a problem. And I mean, eventually I would reach my attention limit and my eyes would be moving over the page and nothing would be going in. But now I've noticed that the point that this happens when I'm reading is much sooner. And I think the reason why it's so much sooner is because social media has changed our lives and our brains. Evolution didn't design us for the world that we live in now. Imagine your ancestors, hundreds of thousands of years ago. They would wake up and go about their day mostly focused on finding sources of food. They probably spent quite a lot of time hungry, foraging for some wild berries and fruit, and tracking their prey for hours. They didn't have anywhere near as much stimulation as we have now. But at the same time, their lives weren't really boring because their baseline level of stimulation was much lower. And the times that they did get some surprise stimulation that demanded that they change their focus, it was either because they found some food source for their tribe or because they just encountered some wild animal and had to run. But now we're inviting apps into our lives which essentially hack our brains and distract our focus. Our phones are constantly buzzing with notifications demanding that we stop what we're doing and pay attention to them. I read a quote the other day, and I can't remember who this is from, but it said, "Notifications are just alarm clocks that someone else is setting for you." And these notifications rely on our desire to be socially connected to other people, something very natural to us, something that our survival used to be dependent upon. And then it constantly brings our status in the group under question. How many people like the thing that we just posted? Are we still popular? Are we still liked? And this has been designed right down to the smallest detail. You know, Facebook and Instagram notifications are colored red because that's the color most distracting for our brains because of its associations with those wild berries that our ancestors used to forage for. In general, I recommend meditation as one of the most important skills someone can develop. But one of the most common objections people tell me is, well, I tried meditation, but I kept getting distracted. And as someone who's meditated for most of his life, let me tell you, me too. And I think it's probably worse now than when I was a teenager, especially during times when I've allowed myself to become distracted. I even have to use an app blocker on my phone when I notice that I'm being taken in too much. And it's honestly shocking when you look at the logs, because these things record how much time and how many times you open an app. It's ridiculous how many times and how many hours in the day can be wasted just on pointless crap that you don't even remember. You don't even register that you're doing it. It's just force of habit. But at the same time, what do I expect? I'm playing with fire, with apps which are designed to take up my time. Social media has its uses, but the legitimate uses are the bait which lure you in. And the next thing you know is that you're hooked and it's pulling you in a direction that you didn't want to go. And we're all swimming in the same poisoned river. And that poison is making us forget that our time is precious. When I last lived in the UK in 2018, I was working as a contractor in the banking sector through my own company, and I was charging £50 or $60 roughly US per hour. But most of my actions in my private life, I didn't behave like my time was worth that much, despite the fact that I had an international company paying that same amount to me in my professional life. I had less belief in the value of my time than my client, who could get rid of me at a moment's notice and wouldn't care. And that's really screwed up. Imagine how much progress we could make if we treated our time like charge-out rates. I remember when I was going through my divorce, my case got passed around the firm through various different lawyers because of staff changes, etc. And one of them was charging £250 per hour. So there was a really huge incentive for me to be really concise and speak clearly and concisely and just plain fast. So fast I could Busta Rhymes would run for his money.
Every time I come, a nigga gotta sit it, then I gotta go in, then I gotta get it, then I gotta blow it, then I gotta show that every little thing a nigga did he be doing, cause it doesn't matter, cause I'm gonna murder everything and everything about a boom, about a big. Do a lot of things, give it to a couple niggas that I always with it, then I gotta get it again.
But I think this goes beyond just distraction and time wasting. The coach Richard Grannon has made some very astute observations about the rise of cultural narcissism. The selfie has some historical precedence, and even in the early 2000s used to be thought of something a little cringy. But it's become absolutely ubiquitous. It's everywhere. People treating it like it's always existed. And okay, narcissism is usually misunderstood as loving yourself too much, but it's actually just a form of self-aggrandizement from a position of insecurity and anxiety, as if your very existence depended on everyone else believing that you were this great person that you project out into the world. And this is why true narcissists are incapable of genuine introspection. What matters isn't who they really are, but who other people think that they are. And to look inwardly is terrifying. And that narcissistic way of thinking has become applied to the general population. These selfies are rarely being taken out of self-love to capture genuine joy, but instead, more often than not, picture after picture are being taken, sometimes hundreds per day, just to try to get the best image to project out onto the world. Because so often we value what other people think of us much more highly than how we think of ourselves. And it's that same primal instinct that I mentioned before. Do the tribe still like us? What is our place in the tribe? That instinct, that natural instinct, has been hacked and manipulated to 1,000 times the volume it was intended to have. Now, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to get a handle on this for your own mental health. It's so important to allow your brain to have quiet, undistracted periods when you can just focus your thoughts and process them in the background. You don't grow muscles in the gym. And I use the gym example a lot for many different things, but it's just so analogous to life. You grow muscles when you're resting and when you're sleeping. Your body gets the stimulation to change in the gym, and then later when it isn't being used, when you're sat around, when you're sleeping, that's when the changes happen. If you're constantly loading your body and brain with stimulation, you're just going to cripple yourself, physically and mentally. Now, meditation, as I mentioned before, is a skill, like driving. It would be ridiculous to take your first driving lesson and then give up because you didn't master driving. Have some patience with yourself. And if meditation isn't for you, then at least try to journal. Write your thoughts out, because the moment you put one thing on paper, then the thoughts underneath it, the reasons why, the connected thoughts can come to the surface. And you can bring out something quite complex from an initial sentence. It's dredged out of your subconscious. In any sort of genuine inner work, though, you'll come across things that will hurt you, that will be scary, that will be uncomfortable to think about. But it's a choice of some hurt now versus much more hurt in the long run. Life is hard, and I think people keep it harder than it needs to be by running away from that hardness, because then they rob the ability that they have to heal and grow and reflect and get better. So they never get the strength to overcome the challenges they face. I've seen it happen again and again. Really promising people just repeating the same patterns, just like an NPC. So please, don't let that happen to you. Value your time. Take control of your own life before someone else does. Please leave a like and subscribe. Thank you very much for listening.